life. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Maximum Mom podcast. And it's so nice to be back because I was off for 2 weeks. I was on my little worldly trip to France, which was a ton of fun. But I'm so glad to be back. And today, I cannot tell you how excited I am to introduce you all to Laura Hartnett. And you all are going to be so excited to learn about Laura's business, Law by Design. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a thrill to be here, Elise.
Oh, I just cannot wait to introduce you to the world of law firm owners because we all need to know more about Law by Design. Well, but first, I always like to start, this podcast, as you know, it's about lawyers, entrepreneurs, moms. I mean, it's that trifecta we deal with. Tell us who is in your family, like who makes up your family?
Yep. My number one supporter is my spouse, Dan. He's a Spanish professor. So we actually were talking about some weird medieval legal things this weekend. So we get to geek out over other weird stuff that's not law. And then I have 2 girls who are 5 and 8 and just fabulous and handfuls and creative and all that wonderful stuff.
Oh, what great ages those are. I love that.
Yes. And we just took them to Europe for their first trip just a couple of weeks ago. And so that was, seeing that through their eyes was, it was like I had never been before. So that was really cool too.
That is amazing. I love that. Well, tell us a little bit. I mean, we just have to dive right into the Law by Design because I really want people to learn about this and understand it. First, tell us about your career trajectory. How did you end up doing Law by Design? Where did you start and where are you now?
Yeah, it makes sense as a lot of people, when you look back, you go, oh, that's why I did all those things. And so when I graduated, from undergrad, I became a management consultant. And I had worked on Capitol Hill, and I was helping federal agencies sort of figure out how to be cheaper, better, faster. This is where my friends didn't understand what a management consultant was. So they thought I was a spy or something. And honestly, we just worked in PowerPoint the whole time. And I missed writing in sentences with periods at the end of them. So I went to law school, of course. So went to law school, became a litigator, and then, lived in full sentences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I started to kind of pull back from those full sentences because we started to have clients saying, well, can you just red, yellow, green what our options are? And I watched other attorneys kind of go, I don't know how to put color on a memo. We couldn't give business clients what they needed outside of what we were trained to do in law school. And so I sort of watched this. I was in BigLaw. It was exhausting at that point in time. I had a 1-year-old that I remember saying, don't learn how to walk right now. I need to work. And recognizing it on the mom side, I couldn't put her on hold. My husband and I, we could have dinner later or we could see each other later, but I couldn't put her on hold. So made the transition in-house, which was a great move. So then I flipped to the other side because now I'm hiring the outside counsel and I'm working directly with my business clients. And I'm realizing sentences are the last thing that they need. A memo is the worst thing. And so I really got to start to experiment. How do I deliver my legal message in PowerPoint, like back when I was a consultant? And how do I add color and charts and graphs? And they got it. And that's where I trained in design thinking, which was really taking off in the business world. And that's when I took it to the legal department to say, this isn't just for the business. This is for lawyers too. And so I got really excited about that. Pandemic hit and I said, it's time. This is what I want to do. I want to do design thinking with attorneys in helping them how to provide legal services. First and foremost, that they go to humans and they're provided by humans, and really put humans back in the equation of what legal services are. So that it all makes sense when I look back.
It does. And I mean, you just speak my language so much when you talk about, providing legal services to humans and by humans. I mean, it's kind of a random thing, but just this past weekend, I was at Disneyland and I was lucky enough through a network connection to get lunch at Club 33, you know, their private club thing, which I didn't know anything about. But that being said, the entire experience at Disney, literally the whole day, I've just kept thinking, oh my gosh, the amount of customer service, attention to detail that is put into Disneyland is pretty monumental. And I mean, on all levels, I mean, from the, you know, the biggest masses, like how you're getting your ticket, how you're getting on the tram, how the lines are actually engineered. I mean, for the masses to, you know, how do you get your fast pass ticket and how do you get up to the front of the line and how do you get into this swanky club and, you know, you're going to be having your swanky lunch in air conditioning and, you know, it's all going to be lovely. It's all human based. I mean,
that's right.
And
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Disney does it better than anyone. I'll tell you, and the moms will understand. I finally broke down and ordered new bras because, you know, now you can just order them from the companies and they come and you can try them on with a glass of wine in your bathroom. And I'll tell you, the packaging made such a difference. Some arrived just like smashed and awful. Some beautiful boxes. You open it, it gives you this beautiful kind of like, you know, wonderful body positive message inside. I will give you, you can have one guess which bras I kept and which ones I returned.
Right.
They thought about me with a glass of wine in my bathroom, opening these boxes, trying to get excited about new bras, which I was like, I'm not, nobody likes this process of shopping for bras. So how do we make legal services? How do we provide legal services more like Disney? Like while our customers are waiting for us or waiting for the court opinion, how do we entertain them while they're in that queue? It's the same thing, but it requires stopping and asking those questions and going into that. And that's where I think it makes the difference between enjoying the practice of law and just getting fed up with the practice of law, frankly.
Completely. I mean, and being just so burned out and stressed and overwhelmed where you're like, what am I doing? And why am I doing it?
Yeah, I can't write another legal memo. No, because when you see your clients light up and get it and go, or you've provided something to them in the right format that they go, oh, you mean I don't have to translate what you just did and I don't have to put it in the 2 pages for the board meeting? Like I can just use this, or you just focus to the conversation because we don't have to talk about anything in green. We just talk about the red. It allows you to do what you do in the best way possible and get excited about it. And that's where my ultimate mission too is I have seen so many women and minorities and other marginalized groups leave the practice of law because it wasn't designed for the full person, the full experience. And so that's my mission, is I want to give them the skills so that they get excited about the practice of law again, that it is actually easy in a way and fun. And I think it can be when you start to apply some of these questions and some of these skills.
Well, in just the thought of, I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but the whole idea of just bringing your authentic personality into your practice of law without regard to maybe your authentic personality isn't typical in the practice of law, but that's okay. And
of course.
And not having, you know, whether it's a partner or, you know, a law firm culture, try to shape your personality into something that, you know, makes them feel like it's all more normal. I mean, I felt like when I was in, you know, bigger law firms as a younger attorney doing insurance defense litigation, they all wanted you to do and act in a certain way. And I was just like, well, but that's just not me. So I don't think that's going to work so good.
Me neither. No, and you hire a person. You don't, in any other business, you're not hiring just for the outcome. Exactly. You want that experience of opening the box, of waiting in that line. And so you get that with the person and their personality. And and on the lawyer side, you're going to attract more people, more clients that like you and like that. Do you really want to serve generic, bland individuals if you are not generic and bland? God, I hope not.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and I have found, I mean, And as I told you before this podcast, and as a lot of people know who followed our firm story, I mean, we have grown just precipitously over the last few years. And I get asked all the time, like, why do you think you've been able to grow when all these people are having so much trouble hiring people? And I mean, one of the reasons I feel like we've been able to keep our pipeline of potential team members just filled to the brim almost just constantly is the idea of what you talk about, you know, really treating people, bringing it all about the people. I mean, the clients are people. You are serving a person. You are a person serving a person. Your firm needs to serve their team members and their clients. I mean, and it's all people, and it's all about those connections, and that how do we deepen those personal connections and bring value to those relationships, whether it's the employee, team member, or whether it's the client.
That's exactly it. And so everything I do, I've really broken down this idea of design thinking that's out in the business world into sort of 3 easy steps for attorneys, because we don't need to we overcomplicate enough in our life. We don't need to do this. And so the word that I can't believe we haven't said yet, but my first whole step is empathy. And that is exactly it. You have to understand who you are as a person, who is on your team. What are their, you know, this is where we start to get a little touchy feely, not inappropriately, but just a little like, what are their desires? You know, do you have the paralegal on your team who their true interest is art? All right. And most people go, well, they kind of dismiss that. Oh, but there's no place for that. Well, maybe there is. Maybe they want to do more of the social media, more of the photography. Totally. Maybe they can do little like fun cartoon sketches that you send out with your, you know, your Friday emails. Like there's a way to keep that person in. So it's about having empathy. And we spent a whole first third just kind of looking at who you are, who your client is, who your colleagues are, to really understand who you are as people. And then you go into experimentation. And that's where you get to just kind of like, let's try different things. Like, what if we had a time machine? What would we do? What would we do in $5? What would we do in $5 million? And then taking it to kind of starting to implement it. And how do you do it on a small scale? Because then when I see people do, and they do this a lot when they buy technology, and nothing against kind of the big technological firms for providers for legal software and things, but they're like, here's what we have. But if you buy a very expensive program and you implement it, but you haven't gone through the process to understand whether that's what you need or what you want, it's not going to work. So how can you try things on a small basis, maybe with a couple of people on your team first, or try something with a client? And how do you get feedback from that? I mean, that's the step that if I could have attorneys do one thing, stop and ask, how did that go? Even just after a meeting with a colleague or with a client, you know, when you know that they're in a position where they're going to give you some honest feedback, get that feedback. And then how do you put it back into the system? I mean, so what we're really talking about is empathy. And that's square in step 1 for what I discuss with people.
Oh, I mean, I kind of think empathy is everything. Like, you know, in understanding, when you talk about that paralegal who loves art, it just immediately reminded me. I mean, we have really some of the most robust and wild Slack channels in our firm. We're a virtual firm, so we are always figuring out how to build community. I mean, that's one of our just highest priorities, you know, as a leadership team, is that community piece. But we do a thing on Friday, and I mean, we all like eagerly await our Friday thing where people have gone in and they've answered all these questions, and it's like a narrative, and they tell us about themselves and what they're interested in, what their dreams are, what their pet peeves are, you know, whatever. And we get all these pictures. We have some of the most amazing people on our team who have such varied interests, skills, curiosities, unicorn spaces. And it has been fascinating to be able to tap into those, where we have one person who literally makes the most amazing cakes. Like, I am 100% convinced she could run a multi-million-dollar cake business. I mean, they are literally top notch. Well, people on our team have actually bought cakes from her, you know, where she's now baking cakes for other people for birthdays and things. We've had people who are card makers, and they're selling Christmas cards and things. And I mean, it's amazing what you can learn about each other and then follow up with that. And that is going to create huge connections. And the possibilities become fairly endless when you're curious enough to empathize with your team. I really do. I think it's amazing that empathy is the first thing. When you think of your checklist, you think of empathy.
That's the first, and curiosity, that is huge. Asking those questions. I mean, my goal truly is that I want to give attorneys these skills, and I just want to let them use it all day, every day with their families. My spouse and I had this conversation because I'm a systems person. I'm going to set up systems in my household, right? So we were discussing about, we will plan out meals for the week. And he's frustrated because he's like, on Saturday mornings, I can't get anybody's. I'm trying to understand what we're going to make for it. He cooks, bless him, what we're going to make for the week. And I'm like, well, let's design think this, Saturday mornings, let's look at what the kids are doing. They're running around. They're excited to be home. They're watching stuff, I'm sort of like just sipping my coffee, very slow. I'm not hungry because I just had pancakes. Like, let's meet people where they are. So maybe it's a bad time to ask them those questions. Right. Where else can we put that? But I mean, that's a household example. But you think about when you talk about kind of curiosity and creativity, we all have those conversations with our clients of, what Netflix show are you binging? And I've even suggested to attorneys, well, if they're binging, whether it's Bridgerton or it's it's the crime podcast or whatever it is, how can you make your writing even sound more like a crime podcast? How can you present it in a way that holds their attention? And that becomes fun for us, because I truly believe lawyers, we tend to say, we're not very creative. We are so creative. We're always coming up with new problems and solutions and finding things. We are so creative. So learning to use that in new and fun ways to connect and to build that community is just, I mean, that's the dream. Like, that's it. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, it is. And then when you go to your next step, that experimentation, that's the one that gets me so excited. I have to tell you, I am a queen experimenter. I love experimenting. I just think that I'm like, how do we know what could be if we're not willing to try weird out the box things? And so I'm always, I mean, my team would just like cringe. I mean, I'm always coming up with
Elise's team.
I know these like innovative. I'm like, well, why don't we try this? And people are like, nobody's ever done that. I'm like, who cares? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't care if nobody's ever done it. Yeah,
maybe it works for you, and you won't know. And doing it in safe and small and cheap sort of ways, because it's when people, and you've seen this with businesses, the edict comes down from on high. We will all now do this thing that no one has ever seen before. Right. That's when they always say it's dead on arrival because no one buys into it. I mean, and this is the background in change management, right? That I kind of pull from to go, no, we need to do it in little bite-sized pieces. We need to preview it. We need to get it wrong a couple of times. And then we go, oh, here's what worked from that. And here's what didn't. Here's what we're going to go and try and do next. So that's exactly it. But lawyers are so risk adverse. They're not, you have this great sort of abundance mindset. Something is going to work out of this. And it's trying to free ourselves of we don't have to do it the way it was taught to us. We can do it differently, starting from there.
Well, and one thing that I've been working on is setting up a beta group, not only of people on our team, but past clients and current clients, to just have a beta group. It's almost, I think of it like a board of directors. I mean, being I guess we're a mid-sized firm now. I don't even know what sizes people are. I've always called us a small firm, but I don't know if we're still small. But getting that group of people, kind of like a board of directors, who you can really look to and try some things and be able to talk to them really frankly about their experience. Because that is the thing I think when I think of experimenting is we have to really understand, because the way it looks on the back end is not always how it's perceived on the front end.
That's right.
And really getting those experiments in place where we can get that feedback. And I love data. I'm a firm believer in getting all the data so that when I do my experiments, I can determine if they've been, abysmal failures or,
Right.
and I try not to even call them failures, because to me, it's just an experiment and it's just data. So if it doesn't work out, that's great. I've just learned something. So I've knocked something off the list that I don't need to try again, or maybe I might want to tweak one thing and then try it again and get that data. So,
right.
Yeah, I just think that experimenting is so important. Well, tell me a little bit about, no doubt with your experience, you work a lot with, like, I think of lawyers maybe in bigger law or, medium law firms. Do you also work with smaller law firms where you can come in and maybe think about design thinking a process? Like intake is something I know that gets discussed a ton among, small business owners. Is that something you would do?
You said it perfectly. That's exactly it. Because I want to be able to reach, there are, the law firms are basically all little entrepreneurs, all the little fiefdoms. So sometimes you think that, especially for women, oh, I'm hampered by what the whole law firm does. When you actually own your own piece of it and you can redesign it. So I want to make sure I reach to those individuals that maybe the whole law firm isn't really embracing this sort of mindset, but you can. I do see a lot more of the creativity and the curiosity in the small law firms where I have done those types of things. You come in and for whether it's a week or, kind of a couple of days or like a full sort of day, go through the process. And it's funny, intake is one of the most popular. And I like to call it an introduction. I'm going to get rid of the word intake because intake does sound very sort of computer transactional, whereas what I think of as an introduction, it's a conversation. It's what information do I want to get from this person, but also what do I want to share with them? It's that exchange. So really kind of understanding what that is, because that can absolutely shape. I find if you can change how you think about that introduction with a client, then it makes it easier to change during the rest of what we call the client journey, in which you're doing the legal services for them, providing it, following up, closing it out. Then maybe they become a client again, or they send you to your friends. But it's really about, and I know a word we haven't said is that delight. Do you delight in delivering these services? And does the client delight in receiving them? Which we don't really use with legal services a lot, but we should. We really should.
I love that. I never have used that word delight, but in that context, but wow. I love that. I think it's exactly what we should be thinking about and talking about. Again, I go back to my Disneyland. I would say they have delight down pat.
100%. Yeah.
And it's exactly what we should be bringing. I think of it in terms of joy, which is probably pretty similar in the delight, vernacular. But I think of it in terms of how do we bring joy to our team members, and our colleagues, and how can we bring joy to our clients? And I think joy is one of those things that people forget to infuse into every day,
Yes.
And I have this silly, I say it's silly, but I use it every day. So I guess I don't really think it's that silly, but it's a thing. It's like a daily calendar. And I still write it out by hand because I'm that person that really likes to see things on a piece of paper. And one of the line items on my daily thing is self-care. And then one is joy. And so literally every single day I see on there what joyful activity I'm going to do. And that could be something as simple as I'm going on a kayak ride, I'm going kayaking, or I'm going on a walk, or I'm going to watch a movie with my husband. Whatever it is, but I'm very intentional about making sure joy is infused in every day. And that sounds kind of silly to think about, like intentionally putting it on, but it has helped me so much just experience more joy.
Right. And remembering that your clients, so when you think about that woman, when she completes this divorce, which is one of the most stressful and painful and emotional and physical things that she will ever go through, how does she get to the end of that experience and go, oh, I hated that divorce. Oh, I loved working with my lawyer, though. She was great. How do you design an experience where, yes, the facts are still the facts and you still need to do the thing and file the thing and write the contract? And how do you do that? But where's that other layer that becomes the memory for the experience? That's exactly it. And that's where you will have joy. She will have joy. And I just think it increases the energy in the universe, and like tenfold by doing that. Absolutely.
Oh, completely. Well, it's funny. I mean, years ago when I started our firm, I was bringing a child off to college at some point. So I'm there, and he had to go early as a football player. We stayed at this hotel, and it was called the Deer Path Inn in Illinois. It's in Lake Forest, Illinois. It's this little boutique hotel. These people absolutely got every one of your needs before you even knew you needed it. Like they were ahead of you on everything. Like we drove up, they immediately knew my son's name. Don't ask me how, I still do not know, but they did. They knew we needed umbrellas coming out of our car. It was starting to rain. They're there with umbrellas. They're there with warm cookies at our car door, knowing we had driven. I was just like, okay, you people are kind of freaky, like how much you're on top of things. But I thought to myself, here I am dropping this child off. It's happy and sad. You know what I mean? You're doing this
bittersweet. Yeah.
They were absolutely attuned to that. Like I would go down and talk to the desk about something, and they would say something like, oh, this is an exciting time for your son to be starting his college football. Oh, this also must be tough. I know you live across the country, and getting to see those football games is going to be, trickier. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they were literally, I was like, how do these people do this?
Right.
And I literally came back to my firm after that weekend at that hotel and said, we need to create the Deer Path Inn experience for our clients. I was like, these people have got this down pat. And it's so fascinating to me how many law firm owners really just overlook all this. Like they're just, on the KPIs, the numbers, the who's billing what. And it's like, they're forgetting some of those experiential people connections.
Mm-hmm. And they think, and some of the objections that I hear, well, it's going to be expensive if we have to have warm cookies on demand, and that it's not always about expense. You can design. Well, you got a budget. We can design for that. Let's make sure we use that money wisely. But it's also some of the, I know, one example talking about that human connection. Especially as in-house counsel, you get to see what law firms send you at Christmas or at the holidays, and how many boring, generic Christmas cards, not signed. Maybe they were personalized. Ooh, personalized, maybe a little thing. And then I had at least one attorney in Boston would send, and I forget if it was virtual. I think it was virtual because that was even better, with pictures of his family. And just like he would send to his friends, his son's playing basketball and they went on this trip, etc. And that gave me that next time I go to court and I'm sitting next to our, outside counsel, I can say, oh, how's the basketball going? Or how, did you catch the big one up at the Thousand Islands?
Totally.
It gave me more to talk about and connect with him, as opposed to, well, I got it done. I sent the card to the law firm, to the people, to the thing. So much more. And was that a budget thing? No, that was an email, because I could also respond to it and hit reply and say, loved the pictures, happy holidays, can't wait to connect in the new year.
Absolutely.
I can't do that with a paper card.
I think with any budget, you can create a human connection. I really do. There's a whole, have you read or learned about this whole giftology?
John Ruhlin. Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly it.
And I think he makes such a good point about really thinking not only about your counterpart, like, that other attorney you might be sending it to, but their family, and how can this be connected to their children in some way or to their spouse in some way. And I think about that a lot in gifts that I send out to people. If I know somebody's spouse is a huge New Orleans fan, and I'm from New Orleans, I might, curate some gift, all of New Orleans products. And, I'm sending it to my counterpart, but I'm going to write a note to their spouse or whatever. And that's going to have more meaning for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, he is the master of that. And that's the empathy. Because he's picturing the experience of when they open, what they do with it. I know I just got a beautiful, fabulous branded water bottle with the company's brand. This is one of his things. Don't put your brand on it. Had they maybe put my initials or Laura on it, I might use it even more often, right? And people might say, oh, I like that water bottle. Then I would say, oh, I got it from, and then continue. And that conversation is worth so much more than somebody just glancing at my water bottle and maybe seeing a logo that they know or don't know. And that's a John Ruhlin principle. It's starting with that empathy, picturing, just like the hotel. Oh, our travelers are going to be tired. They're going to be hungry. They're going to be wet. What would I want? Well, here's what I would want. Let's try it. Let's see how this works. It's bringing that to the legal experience. It requires stepping away and thinking about it. But it's so worth it. Yeah.
Oh, well, and when I think of it, I think of it, in some ways I feel like it's almost selfish, but I think of it so much about my team. I just feel like I spend hundreds and hundreds of hours a month thinking about my team members. Like, I don't know, I feel like as the leader of my office, my just highest calling is to help my team, be as fulfilled as possible and really bring them up, like, develop leaders inside our team. And so when I think of all this, I think of like, how can I make my team members have their jobs be such that when they're coming in, it's safe for them to innovate, to think, and it's safe for them to push back and be like, oh, this isn't working for me, or, we're doing this way and I'm seeing this problem, and be able to communicate that to people, whether it's me or it's their direct leader, whoever, so that we are creating an environment of where it's not just we're all coming to work to, draw up a document or get a family divorce. We're coming to work to like collaborate with each other and to support each other through our lives and like through our daily existences, which sometimes, it's problems or whatever. And I just think your idea of like bringing this design thinking into law firms. Do you meet with whole teams sometimes when you're doing this?
Yes. So sometimes it can be, because you do want to have everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes there has to be, if an organization has been very indoctrinated into a certain hierarchy, and when we're talking about law firms here, sometimes there does need to be, say, an anonymous survey to begin with, so that way I can see, okay, this is what you're all thinking. And I can kind of put those ideas anonymously in front of them to get some of that reaction, or meet and kind of break off into different types of groups. But absolutely to have them all, because one of the things, one of the best things in business that I know I learned that I can share is you have the answers. I don't come in and I can't say, here's what you need to do. Boop, 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 boop. Don't ever pay for that. You have the answers. It's my job to bring them out of you, to ask the questions, to push you to go further, to try to think it more. And I think the ideas start to generate when you have one person and someone says, we always use the yes and, of course, yes and let me build upon that. Yes and let me build upon it. Now we've got a better idea from the entire group than I had if I just would have met with say the law firm administrator or just the, senior partner, because they can't see what's going on at the secretary's desk, who, they know what is going down. And
Oh, yeah.
you need all those perspectives together. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing I think about when you talk about asking questions, I mean, do you have a particular question that, it's kind of like your go-to question when you're working with firms?
I have so many, but I know one. My favorite is just the how might we insert the rest of the question there. Because it puts you in that future mindset. And it also shows you that it's possible. It's a question of hope, not to be too touchy-feely about that too, but it's the how might we have that divorce where the person says, oh, but I love that. How might we reduce confusion when someone has just lost their their elder? How might we? And so by starting with empathy, you can't just quite start with how might we? And also you have the we part too. I'm just saying, we're just talking about how might we all as a team, knowing that no one person can do it. So it helps kind of displace some of that responsibility. I love that. And that's it's a dreaming question. And it's one of those, when you put it out there, because we're lawyers too, your brain starts to answer the question. You immediately start to come up with different ways to solve it. Now we're going somewhere with how might we. So that's what I would encourage.
Oh, I love that. I mean, we actually instituted a dream program in our firm and had our first recipient of that dream program just a few weeks ago. And it was one of the more powerful things for me as the leader of the office to get all these applications of people applying for the dream program. And it's a program of totally open-ended of things like people who might need, some fiscal help for something. Maybe it's a down payment on a house, or maybe they're looking to go back to school and, become a paralegal or become an attorney, or maybe they want to go on some once in a lifetime trip. And so they send in applications. They kind of tell me what steps they've taken thus far in achieving that dream and where they are in their, final ability to act on that dream. And then we are choosing one person every quarter as the recipient of this program. And it reminds me of that, how might we? It's like for us, it was how might we help our team members achieve their personal dreams?
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so, and you solved it and you're fulfilling it.
Yeah.
And you're creating joy. That's exactly it. I want to go back too, because I had another thought that maybe this will be your new Slack channel ad, and I offer this to anyone else too. But you talk about having that space to fail, and whether you call it failure, or you call it, well, now I know that, whatever that is. But I've encouraged lots of lawyers, and very few, if not maybe none of them, have actually taken me up on this. But starting team meetings with, here's what I did that didn't work.
Oh yeah,
I just want to share that. That develops that, when we talk about that authenticity, that vulnerability that we want to have.
Yep.
To say there is a safe space. So having a Slack channel of, this did not work. And that helps that environment of innovation and trying things, because then somebody's going to respond to that and say, well, did you do this? Did you do this? I think this is why I love making macarons. I'm not great at it yet, but I have to keep failing the oven temp, or how long, there's 3 different methods to make the meringue, or what kind of filling I put. I make so many mistakes every single time. They're tasty and I will eat them all, and I make my friends eat them.
Right.
That's part of the fun and getting comfortable with just failing until you get this delicious, perfect little French cookie, right? That's it.
I just love that idea. I mean, we will start that Slack channel. So I will let you know once that's in place, because I mean, we talk about it, we talk about that safe space, but I mean, it only makes sense to put it out there where we can talk about what didn't go right and then brainstorm around it, but also just, I think, flexing that muscle of being comfortable announcing when you've done something that didn't work out well or made a mistake, I mean, I try to model that all the time. And lucky for my team, I make mistakes, like in the thousands every day. So we have lots of examples to choose from. And so I try to model that where I'll say, oh yeah, well, I completely botched this, or I did this,
Right.
because I feel like, how else are we ever going to learn? And one thing we're noticing, and I'd be curious if you see this with the firms, people who come to us from other firms, and maybe they've been at another firm for a long time, they almost have PTSD type reactions to talking about errors. Like, it wasn't safe in all firms to make errors.
No. I came from one of those firms, and even where it came down to, but this was a matter of interpretation, and I didn't. But we would have done this other thing, and we would have been fine. We would have worked our way out of it. And they're going, oh no, no, and it just takes. That's where you waste so much time and you waste so much money, because you're trying to cover up the error. Nobody wants the error, versus getting it out in the open as quickly as possible, getting a team on it, but accepting it's going to happen. And kudos to you, because it starts, the tone is set by the leadership. So as soon as a leader says, I made a mistake, here it is, whether it's small or large. And I want to take us back to the mom conversation, not a child psychologist by any means, but I know for me, I make sure I tell my kids on the regular, hey, mama messed up. Hey, mama made so many mistakes today. Well, look what we're going to do, because are we good problem solvers? Yes, we are. So we're going to problem solve our way out of this. Absolutely. Is there something we can't solve? Absolutely. My husband always likes to say, and again, he's just better than I am. He's like, we're resourceful and we have resources. Yeah. Let's figure out what our resources are and where we need to be resourceful, and let's go to it. So I think that's important, because otherwise we raise kids who then become that next generation of attorneys who are so scared to make a mistake because they never saw their parents make a mistake. So we want to release that cycle. Absolutely.
Oh, I think that is such a burden for children to not feel empowered, to just fall flat on their face at times. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't see how else we learn. And I mean, I was that parent that I'm like, oh, try this sport, and my kids would be like, but I'm in 6th grade. I can't start this in 6th grade. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you can start anything, anytime. Like, you could be 45 and decide you want to learn to play lacrosse. Like, I assure you, it's okay. But you really do have to model that, where you're trying new things and putting yourself out there. But I mean, I think part of the generation of children we've seen that are really, that failing causes a lot of anxiety. And it's like, that's worrisome to me, because I don't know, I'm quite comfortable in my failing routines. And I just think that, I mean, I like to say I fail forward, like I keep going. I usually pick myself up, dust myself off, try to figure out if I've got some good data, like what I did wrong, how I could fix it. But then I'm up for the next experiment. And
that's it.
It's funny you talk about that law firm, when people spend time trying to cover up. I mean, we are in the process actually of creating our oh shit process. That's what we've named it, where you have a problem and it's like, we just have to get a process around, like, how do you announce it? Who do you announce it to? What team members come on to help brainstorm, and figure out. But the really overarching thing for me is, how do we make this process just be as safe as humanly possible, where we have people falling over themselves to tell us if there's a problem, not the reverse.
Nice. Oh, that's so nice. Because then, and in doing that, to know that there's a process that feels like that safety net. And then when you bring in the other people, they don't come in with blame and, I was working on this thing, but now I got to go help, Stacy with her. No, because they knew they were part of the solution. And absolutely. And you get to celebrate. My final step too is always celebration. And maybe this is something I know for a family, We celebrated when we were in like the thick of lockdown and we got a bag of library books that were able to pick up.
Yeah.
We put on Celebration by Kool and the Gang, and we had a whole like family hoedown because we're like, we got library books, we have something new to read, we're so excited. Like, we just love to celebrate no matter what as a family.
Yeah.
It's great to practice that, but also to have a celebration at the end, whether it's just a little virtual 5-minute dance party or whatever works for your team and your community, to be like, we solved it. There's nothing wrong. We got it. What did we learn from this? Yes, go team. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? I mean, we've been in those organizations where let's hide it. Oh, I gotta go help that person. Oh, you have just set up a beautiful system that is going to just raise everyone up. And that is, if I could just get more law firms to do that, that would be. Wouldn't the practice of law be an amazing place in which we encourage everyone to join?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because you and I think, are very much on the same, like, larger path of really radically disrupting how law firms do it.
Yes. Yes. That is actually, that's funny, because that's one thing that someone had noted once. They're like, oh, you're really a disruptor. And they meant it as a compliment. And I thought, I will take that. I love that idea. And to do it in knowing that we're not going to change everything. We're not going to just blow up the world. We got to start with one thing, because we are lawyers, we are risk adverse. So how do we start by changing one thing? Maybe it's that client introduction process. And then that starts you thinking about, oh, well, now we could do this. Now we could do that. So doing it in safe, bite-sized pieces that everyone's comfortable with, there's a way to do it too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I really kind of help lawyers embrace.
Well, and just thinking about that entire client journey. I mean, I think of the whole thing from where they first get exposed to your brand to when you're, wrapping up your work with them, and then you're literally looking like, how can that person become one of your raving fans and bring in other business similar, like another ideal client just like them. And then how do you bring value back to that client for years to come? Where, I mean, one of my highest things that I just love when somebody reaches out to me, and I mean, I haven't worked for them for years. I had somebody do this weekend, and they were like, Elise, I know you're super connected in this particular area. Do you have resources for this thing that I'm struggling with my teenager? I need some help. And I was like, of course. But I mean, that to me is like that full circle client experience that you want.
That is exactly it. And I would I'm even going to push and go even one step further at each end. That what are they doing before they perceive your brand? What are they doing the moment before they have that problem, before they get divorced? And how do you even put yourself earlier in that stage? And then also where I see, and the best examples I have are certainly from my time where I really was I kind of became the spy. I was really on both sides. I was kind of on both sides of the equation as outside counsel and then in-house counsel in really understanding how is the legal opinion, contract, whatever it may be, how is that going to be used well after the lawyer has left the picture? Because what I recognize that lawyers didn't understand is that even though my client might be the, whoever counsel or whoever in marketing, that person was then going to have to go and implement it into an employee handbook, into a presentation, into other places that maybe they never told me about. Because again, they're, I'm billing them on 6-minute increments, so they're not going to go into all of that. But trying to understand that my legal work has a life after I leave the picture, and how can I make that so that it is most helpful, most joyful, and has its best life, quite frankly, even after I'm gone. So that sometimes these questions really change the perspective of what we do from just writing the document, which is boring.
Yeah. And I mean, sick of. I think of in our work with family law, I mean, a parenting plan literally can last for 18 years. And how do I bring both value and really positive design thinking into that? I mean, that is a really provocative question. Hmm.
Yeah. And that's family law. That's, and you trust in the states too. And it's kind of one of those questions sometimes. And again, this is what I ask lots of questions, and we go deeper to try to figure out where is that thing. It's sort of, who is your client? Is your client the future deceased, the person who's writing the will with you? Is your client the trust administrator at the bank? Is your client the accountant? Is your client the any number of individuals who are going to read that, that trust document, that will document afterwards? And who's your audience? Who are you writing towards, so that you make sure that this document, again, because it has to, very similar to the parenting plan, it has to fulfill all of these things many times. You always hope many, many years after you wrote it. So it's thinking about these. This is it. This is legal design. This is the future, and this is what they are actually starting to teach in law schools. So there's a handful of, I say handful, and it should be even more than that. This is now taught at Vanderbilt, at University of Minnesota. It's at Harvard. It's really starting now. Whether you take this class, it's, there people are going to focus on your contracts and your torts, but it's starting to get there, and that just excites me. So hopefully you're going to have the new crop of lawyers coming out of law school, or they were exposed to this sometimes even in their high school or in their middle school, as they start to think about this, coming out with this mindset. So I hope this is the future generation, and it's also just going to click to go, oh, of course, why would I not do that in my legal practice? Of course we would. So
it is pretty exciting to think about really turning your focus as a law firm owner from the way we've always done things to the entire world of possibilities.
That's it.
And
That's it.
Yeah, and I just think there's so much out there that law firms in particular just have not embraced. They have been very set in their ways. And I don't know that it's, fully serving clients well at all. I mean, we could talk about this for hours.
No, the pandemic, I think, helped in that way. It was also painful in that it exposed a lot of sometimes the hierarchy that people did not want to expose, the culture, how they delivered services, and they weren't ready for that. So I think the pandemic in some ways has this has been again, and I'm the glass half full, no surprise, right? That law firms are starting to see that and go, oh, how we did this before is not how we want to go forward. And if we're going to use this time to reinvent, let's do it in a smart way.
Laura, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this conversation, and I'm really excited for people to learn more about your work. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Law by Design?
Sure. So my website is my name. It's Laura, Laura Hartnett, HARTNETT.com. And even if you go to innovate, INNOVATE.LauraHartnett.com, that will take you to, I have a download where I really want people just to use it as sort of 5 alternatives to a legal memo. So if you don't know where to start and you just want some ideas and how could I present ideas to clients in different ways, I kind of tell you good ways to do it, bad ways to do it, where you should, and it give you a couple of examples. So that might help start your thinking a little bit from there. But would love to just hear where these ideas have impacted you and what you took away from this. So would love if you reach out.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I look forward to watching your business just flourish as you do this work with law firm owners and lawyers in other law firm settings, because I think it can revolutionize how people are experiencing the practice of law. And to me, it's such a privilege to be a lawyer. And I want people to love it.
Yes. That is my whole mission of let's revolutionize the practice of law into something that we actually enjoy and we're proud of. Bring back that joy.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you again for dealing with my tech issues that I had at the beginning. I appreciate your patience.
Number one for the new failure Slack channel, things that we learned, right? That's great. You got it started right there.
Absolutely.
I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation, and congratulations to all the success that you have used because you're implementing these principles. Exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Elise.
Bye, Laura.
Bye-bye.